Yawgmoth, Thran Physician versus Jalira, Master Polymorphist. Mathas, Fiend Seeker. And Gargos, Vicious Watcher. Not the best hand, but we've got mana, so I'm not going to throw away a hand that has mana because, well, it's sod's law that we would draw into a hand that would have no mana in response to that, so let's go for the basic and pass over. And the reason I decided to whip this deck out again is because a very kind viewer on Tapped Out, very kindly, as a thank you for this deck, decided to upgrade my Tapped Out page, which was very, very kind. They said that I don't have a Patreon or a PayPal link button or anything like that, so that was the only way that they could help support the channel monetarily. And yeah, very kind gesture that. That was, yeah, very humbling. So, big thank you to Mark, also known as the God of Night on Tapped Out. This gameplay video is dedicated to Mark. Now then, we're just going to go in for Charcoal Diamond, I think. Haven't played this deck in a few, well, probably over a month, maybe just a few weeks, but I have to see if I can actually remember how to play it. Going over to Gargos, Vicious Watcher. That is 6 mana for an 8/7 with Vigilance. It makes Hydras cost 4 generic less to cast, and whenever a creature you control becomes the target of a spell, Gargos can fight up to 1 target creature you do not control. And they are doing what green does best and starting to ramp up to their commander and other green spells, I imagine. Mathas Fiend Seeker, 3 mana in Mardu for a 3/3 vampire with Menace. At the beginning of your end step, put a bounty counter on a target creature an opponent controls. For as long as that creature has a bounty counter on it, it has, whenever it dies, each opponent draws a card and gains 2 life. And finally, Jalira, Master Polymorphist, 4 mana for a 2/2 human wizard, mono blue. For 3 in tap, and sack another creature. Reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a non-legendary creature card. Put it onto the battlefield and the rest go on the bottom. So it's a polymorph with legs, basically. We are just drawing into all of our mana, aren't we? How about we go for Genesis Chamber, and then we'll go for the Skull Clamp as well. Our opponents have a chance to blow up the Skull Clamp before we've had a chance to use it now, but it just saves on mana in the long run. We want plenty of tokens in play, that's why Genesis Chamber is in here, because Yawgmoth's ability is pay 1 life and sack a creature to put a minus counter on another creature and draw a card. He's 4 mana for a 2/4 in mono black, has protection from humans, and also has the ability of 2 black and discard to proliferate. We do have a little bit of infect in here, so that proliferation may come in handy. A Basilisk Collar for Gargos, that's really good with the fight mechanic, because it will give Gargos Death Touch, so it doesn't matter about the power and toughness of the creature it fights if it has Death Touch. And what is this? Target creature gains protection from artifacts until the end of the turn. Okay. I'm not sure what that's there in aid of. They'll have to be careful not to target their Gargos with that, because it will make the equipments fall off. And Anguished Unmaking onto the Genesis Chamber. Well, I would rather it went on that than the Skull Clamp. Not sure I would worry too much about a Genesis Chamber. Not enough to use Anguished Unmaking, but maybe this is Mardu mass removal control, like our Queen Marquesa deck. So they might not struggle on removal and therefore can spend it willy-nilly. Looks like our Jalira friend over here may be holding up counter magic, so I'm not going to go for... Yeah, I'm not going to go for our commander here. I don't think I want to go for the Weaponcraft Enthusiast either. Let's go for... It means Skull Clamp's out there for even longer, but let's hold up the Dictate of Erebos. We can get that down at the end of the blue player's turn, and then go in for Weaponcraft Enthusiast and Skull Clamp, and maybe get some Dictate of Erebos triggers going off, as well as drawing some cards. A Gaia Sage. Yeah, shouldn't have any problem evolving that thing in a Hydra deck. And I'll be intrigued to see if everyone has their attention on us just because we are running Yawgmoth. It's a very powerful commander, but It's it's very easy to underestimate Gargos as well. And actually, I imagine Jalira has some really good stuff as well. I mean, it's mono blue, which is worrying in itself, but the fact that you can cheat out creatures is even better with that commander. Giving the Jalira player Xantia. Now let's see where they want to swing in with it. I would probably swing it over here to encourage Gargos to block with some mana dorks. What was that? A mass, and you and permanents you control gain hexproof until the end of the turn. Okay, maybe they just did that for the zombie token. They did do that at the end of Mathas's turn, so the zombie can swing in. A Coral Atoll enters. They have to return an island to their hand if they want to keep that. Comes in tapped and taps for 2 mana. Just a bounce land effectively. And yeah, it's coming straight in at us as I assumed it would. We're still going to go for this Dictate of Erebos at the end of their turn. If they have counter magic, then they'll have to counter on their turn. That means we've pretty much got free reign to do whatever we want on our turn. And a Grave Pact as well, so if someone gets rid of the Dictate, then we can still get the Grave Pact going. Let's go for Weaponcraft Enthusiast. And that comes down, Fabricates. We don't want the plus counters, we want the servo tokens here. And that way we can get some Skull Clamp effects going. We'll refill our hand and force these 2 creatures to be sacrificed. Unless the green player has something to say about it. Okay. Target creature gains protection from artifacts, so the servo cannot be equipped up with the Skull Clamp. That's alright, we've still got the mana to equip the other servo up, and we'll probably just equip up the Weaponcraft Enthusiast as well. This will force our opponents to sacrifice a creature with the Dictate of Erebos. And we will draw a couple of cards off of Skull Clamp, and then we'll have to go for the Weaponcraft Enthusiast as well. Oh, a Haunt of Hightower is pretty nice, and we've got some lifelink from the Whip of Erebos as well. Yeah, not the best cards that we've drawn into, but we'll see if we can stick a Haunt of Hightower. Recently played Villis, and what we managed to do there was get out enough threats onto the board to waste our opponents, or not waste it, but encourage them to use their removal on everything but Villis. And then by the time Villis actually came down, they didn't have any more removal to spend on him, so maybe we can do that again this game. And Authority of the Consoles. Creatures your opponents control enter tapped, and whenever a creature enters under an opponent's control, you gain a life. I was just thinking it would be nice to have a Lightning Greaves for the Haunt of Hightower, but it doesn't actually matter if it's going to come in tapped. Alright, Training Grounds will make the Jalira player only cost 1 tap and sack to activate. And quickly getting back round to our turn. The Gargos player has 5 mana held up. There's some blue mana held up over here. That's 4 mana. Yeah, we'll try and get down the Haunt of Hightower. See if it sticks. We need to get counter magic out of our opponent's hand if they have it, so might as well go for this. Comes in tapped, so that's good. They did not want to counter that if they do have counter magic. And then let's make our opponent give this thing protection from artifacts. Oh no, they're F6'd, so that did land. Yeah, that's really good. So we draw in some more cards. Yeah, back up to 7, that's really good. Let's just pass over to our opponent. Yeah, Gargos was F6 there, so we managed to clamp the servo token, and they didn't get to do their Tower of the Magistrate trick. They have Gargos mana now, but decided not to cast Gargos, probably because of the Dictate of Erebos. A Solemn Simulacrum will get them into a basic mountain, I imagine. I didn't actually see in the description that my opponent put no infinite, so we do have infinite stuff in the deck, but I won't go for it if my opponent requested that we don't. Let's get down this Reliquary Tower so we don't need to worry about hand size for the rest of the game. And then I think I quite like the idea of going in for a discard on the blue player. Are they likely to... yeah, they might bounce it in response. Actually, let's go in at... we'll go in at Gargos. they will have to discard a card. And whenever someone does discard, we'll get a plus counter on the Haunt of Hightower. They discarded an Aspect of Hydra, nice flavourful card. And we will successfully hit our opponent for 4. We go up by 4. Let's sign in blood as well. Lose 2 life and draw 2 cards. There's that Lightning Greaves. We'll go for the Dreadhorde Invasion as well. And also the Lightning Greaves. The Hydra player may have... Nope, they have not switched off their F6, so we managed to put the Lightning Greaves onto the Haunt of Hightower, feeling much better about that. I don't know what our opponent can do at instant speed. Oh, nothing apparently. I thought they were going to do something for 6 mana at the end of our turn, but they were just F6'd apparently. They could have kept the Lightning Greaves off of our Haunt of Hightower. Gargos does come down, and I don't know if they have a fight card in hand or not, but we don't need to worry about that as much thanks to the Lightning Greaves. A curse going on to us. Whenever a player attacks the enchanted player, they get a black zombie token, so that encourages them to come in our way. It would be nice to get into a creature so that we can victimise the Weaponcraft Enthusiast back into play. Might have to go for a Whip of Erebos to get that going. Then we can Skull Clamp and force our opponents to get rid of their creatures. Dictate of Erebos might not be as good if everyone starts getting a lot of zombies into play. A Field of Ruin, where is that pointed? That is going at the Reliquary Tower. Yeah, people are just... they seem to be mindlessly blowing up our stuff without actually thinking about what they're doing. I don't know if I would have bothered going for a Field of Ruin onto the Reliquary Tower. But maybe they're desperate for an island. Field of Ruin is sacrifice it, destroy a non-basic land, and each player searches for a basic. It's arguable that we would actually want swamps in play more than anything else, thanks to things like Cabal Coffers. Yeah, I think if I was desperate to go for a Field of Ruin, I would have gone for Nykthos Shrine to Nyx over anything else, because that can generate a lot of green mana. But it may be that everyone's just scared of the Dictate of Erebos, which is fair enough. And perhaps the blue player is betting on Gargos not being able to keep creatures in play. At the beginning of our turn, we get a zombie token from the Dreadhorde Invasion. Now then, does our opponent have Cyclonic Rift held up? They've got 7 mana. So I think in that case we will clamp the zombie token, just in case we lose it during combat, because I am going to swing in at them and force them to use the Cyclonic Rift, or at least encourage them to. They should use it at the end of Mathas' turn, really, but we don't know what's going to happen. That gets Gargos off the board, and probably the Solemn as well, yeah, for card draw. And then we will go to combat and swing in at this blue player, and let's see if we can encourage them to use the Cyclonic Rift that I think they might have. They discard a Mirror Pool. It doesn't look like they're using any bounce. Just taking a hit for 7 in the air. We are up to 41. And why don't we... do we want to go for... We could go for our Commander and the Sengir Autocrat. And that would leave us with 7 cards in hand. Yeah, I think that's alright. Sengir Autocrat comes in with 3 Surf tokens, and then we will get down Yawgmoth so that we can sacrifice those at instant speed and force our opponents to sacrifice a creature with Dictate of Erebos. We have 7 cards in hand, so that can be that. Still might see that Cyclonic Rift from the blue player, but they may just be waiting for our other opponents to get stuff down before they use that. At least we got some big points of damage in on them. Oh, and how annoying. The Mathas player just appears to have, I don't know, gone AFK. The Gargos player has gotten bored and decided to quit. Hasn't said anything. Alright, they've decided to reappear. Wish they'd decided to pass priority sooner, because we might have actually had a Hydra player at the table. But they said they disconnected, so that's fair enough. A temple comes down. And then an Assemble the Legion. Really like Assemble the Legion. I don't have any decks with it in, but it is a little pet card of mine. I like token strategies in general, so Assemble the Legion is something that I've always wanted to play. Could maybe make some soldier tribal build of some kind at some point. Yeah, that's something to think about. The zombie token is coming in at us, and that will make another zombie. I think we'll just take this. We could sacrifice a creature in response, but I'd like the blue player to get some creatures out before we get Dictate of Erebos triggers off, so taking the 2 damage is the best thing to do there, I think. Didn't see a Cyclonic Rift as well, which is noteworthy, so I'm guessing they, in fact, do not have a Cyclonic Rift. Now then, what is that? A Drowner of Hope is an Eldrazi, a 5/5 with Devoid. When it enters, you get some Eldrazi tokens, and then you can exile 1 to tap a creature. So in response to that, I'm going to sacrifice a Surf token and put a minus counter on the zombie. That will encourage everyone to sacrifice a creature. Oh, and I completely misremembered about Haunt of Hightower. It's not whenever you discard a card, it's whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard, it gets a plus counter. So, yeah, I misspoke on that. It's not discard specifically, it's just whenever something hits the bin. And another thing I always forget with Yawgmoth is if you decide to point the minus counter at a creature, and then your opponents sacrifice said creature in response to something like a Dictate of Erebos, it does actually counter that ability, and therefore you don't draw the card. So what you can do instead is not put a minus counter on something, because it does say up to 1 target creature. So if you pay the life, sack a creature, and then decide not to put a minus counter on something, then you will draw the card. This is all if you've got a Dictate of Erebos in play, or someone can sacrifice a creature in response to you pointing a minus counter at it. Just food for thought, and it's something I always forget about. The Dreadhorde Invasion does get us into another zombie token again. And Mathas is gaining a lot of life over there, thanks to Authority of the Consuls. As much as I'd like to target this blue player, I don't really know where to aim everything here. I think we kind of have to keep Mathas's life total down a bit. Let's go for the clamp onto the zombie army. That will force our opponents to to sacrifice a creature each. Liliana, Heretical Healer. We can flip her over easily enough, and that can get some discard on the go. Yeah, quite like the idea of that. Let's swing in with some creatures first. We'll take the big creature in at Mathas, and then a couple of creatures in at the blue player. Haunt of Hightower triggers and forces Mathas to discard a card. They'll be down to 4 cards here. They get rid of Bounty Hunter. Destroy a target creature with a bounty counter on it. Goes very well with their commander. Then let's get down this Liliana, and we will... What do we want to do? Instead of clamping, let's just do it for free. We will pay a life, choose not to put a minus counter on anything, and then sacrifice a Surf. And then because we didn't put a minus counter on the Eldrazi, that will not counter Yawgmoth's ability when they sacrifice that to the Dictate of Erebos. Oh, it's a non-token creature that needs to die. Yeah, my apologies. So in that case, we sacrificed a Surf for nothing. No, we need to get rid of the Sangir Autocrat in that case. There we go, and that triggers Liliana. Yeah, I lost a Surf for no reason there, but we can easily get the Sangir Autocrat back. We might as well sacrifice this Surf, because it's going to die to the Sangir Autocrat being killed off. There we go, so let's draw a couple of cards here. Liliana will flip over. And we'll draw another card there. We haven't made a land for the turn, so that's good. Play that. Then we will plus Liliana and have everyone discard. What do we want to get rid of? I think we've got enough cards, so we'll get rid of Night's Whisper. Okay, and just so we've got more sack fodder for Yawgmoth, let's get down the Rite of Bells in Lock. And then let's shift the Lightning Greaves over to Yawgmoth and see if we can stick a Glistening Oil onto the Haunt of Hightower. That will give it Infect. Gets down really quickly, so it doesn't look like this blue player is playing a lot of counter magic. And what do we want to discard? I don't think we're ever going to play this Everflowing Chalice, are we? So let's just get rid of that. Assemble the Legion triggers and gets Mathas some soldier tokens. They've discarded Baird, Steward of Argive. And the blue player got rid of Benthic Behemoth. That's just a 7/6 with Island Walk. I think they'd be better off leaving that soldier back. Although, yeah, the Haunt of Hightower is in the air, so it might not make that much difference. Because the Mathas player is more likely to have mass removal and spot removal as well, I think we'll take in the 11/11 Infector into them next turn. Yeah, we just so happen to have come across a couple of casual players, so yeah, that's unfortunate. A Sphinx of Athun comes down for the blue player, but unfortunately for them that does come in tapped, so we could go in for the Haunt of Hightower win next turn. Now it might be that they do a deal with Mathas. Mathas might give them all the cards here in one pile. Okay, and the blue player decides to scoop that up. Let's see if the Mathas player wants to allow us to swing in or not. The blue player had another draw there, potentially, and the Mardu player doesn't know whether they are going to get another draw or not, so yeah, they should have played it out. Apologies to the God of Night from Tapped Out, that upgraded my Tapped Out account very kindly. Wanted to get a real game of Yawgmoth in, but this did showcase a little bit of what Yawgmoth can do. It also showcases what a Dictate of Erebos can do and how everyone should run removal. I think the only removal we saw was Anguished Unmaking from Mathas, and that was a very, very fast Anguished Unmaking that they shouldn't really have used that early on. But yeah, a Mardu player and a mono green player should have no trouble removing this whatsoever. It is very important when you're making decks to run plenty of removal, and it's just not something that you see a lot of in multiplayer Commander, at least in Magic Online anyway. But hopefully you all got some enjoyment seeing Yawgmoth do what he does best. I'm tribalkai on the EDH channel. Thank you for watching.